Hi, and welcome to Fan Commentaries. Now, there's a lot to talk about in this particular episode, and the first thing is we have a normal recap of the previous episode. I really love this. This is what Power Rangers used to do, and they finally brought it back rather than wasting the time with the, stock opening that introduced the show over and over again. And now we get introduced to our remaining main villains of the series. What I also loved about the series is that since they're using all the later elements in Go Busters, well, they're also introducing us to a new main villain, an original villain for Beast Morphers. He's an original character, but he takes elements from Enter in Go Busters. Like he has a laptop, and he controls most of the robots. But he's still subservient to Evox himself because, again, you can't have Evox be the main villain in the series because he's an expensive visual effect. So we have to have someone in between. The set is from the alternate dimension that can be used later on in the series, so it has that visual connection, and it's a very different type of lair for the enemy. Instead of a traditional underground base, spaceship, which I was getting personally tired of, and we have a destroyed virtual city of kind. Now this was such a tease because Devon was so like really wanted to see the simulator room, and then we never get to see it in this episode. Now, this episode has to, of course, feature the whole teamwork leader of Power Rangers. It's a staples episode type, but it actually does a few new things, which is very difficult for this type of show because it's done in nearly every season of Power Rangers. We always have to have a obligatory who's the leader of the team, who, doesn't follow rules. So it's nice that they figure out a way to incorporate new things without, making this feel boring. And of course, we get introduced to our new companions that were, from Go Busters and brought over here. For the most part, their personalities are very similar to what they did in Go Busters, but I do like their voices. I have no complaints because, again, they have to work with what they have in Go Busters. You really can't deviate with these characters. And here's our return with Kelson Henderson. Of course, Kelson has been doing PR for so many years, it would be a shame that he would disappear, and luckily they have a part for him, and he's playing Cruz. I do love it when, people come back from previous years and do something else. I always appreciate anyone, always to return, even in the smallest of roles. And I do love that these guys, Ben, they actually are used for the story. Unlike, major complaints with Bulk and Spike and, anyone else, we have them actually be a part. They kind of fill the boom role from SPD. They're also kind of a mixture of Cat in that sense. But even though their antics are funny, like, I like I like their hair. And it's a good joke. It's a simple joke, but it's still enjoyable. But they also factor into the episode and things get paid off with them. I also love when Power Rangers shows us all the new stuff as like a big moment rather than, oh, we introduced this new stuff right in during the battle. We never could appreciate certain things when they're in the fight. I also found it interesting that the keys are actually a part of the villain side. I didn't think they were going to do that, but they actually do it. I also noticed that the actual key blade is actually a visual effect, so the props actually don't have that ability to extend the blade. So whenever we see it, it's an expensive effect shot. I like that Devon is actually in love with all the fancy stuff even more because that's what a person would really do. While Ravi wouldn't be as much because he's been training, and same for Zoe. What I also appreciate about this, because this is the teamwork episode, instead of doing it with the obligatory Red Ranger, we have actually do it with blue and yellow. So it's a different change, but it also factors into the story later on due to their weaknesses. I think that's probably one of the best jokes in PR because it naturally works into the episode. We use the element of her being the mother of Ravi and putting a joke in there that fits. It's funny in this world where it's all futuristic, we have these avatars and these cyborg stuff, and he's still pumping the Morphex in a manual crank pump. I also like that they actually brought back, the cold opening, meaning, we have actually a bit of the episode, and it goes on for like, 4 or 5 minutes. It gets you in the mood, it sets everything up. Of course, this is our beginning of our first main civilian fight in the series, and we get to see like how the different styles of each of them are, because we only got to really see Devon fight in the pilot episode, so now we get to see Ravi and Zoe. This also brings up a little bit of an issue because, like I said in the first episode, all these characters in here are either American made or came earlier in than compared to what happened in the Super Sentai. So they have to work around footage that happens in Go Busters with us. So characters have to disappear. You can spot Devon's stunt double fairly easy because his hair doesn't exactly match. This is not a good place to do that, which again, this is the reason why their teamwork is not working because they're arguing in the middle of battle, which is wrong. And I do like that little bit of throwaway line in the, if you listen carefully, Zoe says she only failed the classes because she was juggling too many things, so she got dropped because she just could not keep up with it, which is great. It answers what I had asked before, and it shows that she has some flaws. I thought this was actually a pretty cool idea how they created a monster. They used the keys to inject any inanimate object to form a monster, which is similar to what they did in Go Busters, but it's much different. Now, I really appreciate this, even though I prefer a morph sequence rather than a instant real time morph. The amount of work that went into this morph really shows and pays off for the series because again, this is our first time we're seeing them, and it was the first time we get to see a full morph, where the Rangers are doing it rather than, them being doing it with Nate. And I love when the effects crew does take the time to do it because there was a lot of details in there that they had to work on. I also really like how well the effects crew recreates the Go Busters visuals because they have to match Japanese footage as well. Now, this is our introduction to the weaknesses of the characters. Now, this is in Go Busters as well, and I had thought they would have, removed this from Beast Morphers because it was the aspect I really didn't care for. It was very odd, but they had to do it because there was probably no way to cut around it. But I do like that they changed the weaknesses for a few of them. Instead of in Go Busters, Red's weakness was about chickens, but in here it's about dogs, and it does make some basic logical sense in the sense because he's cheetah DNA, so they worked it into the story. Now, Ravi's weakness is the same in Go Busters. If he, attacks himself, he overheats and he goes berserk. What I also really like about it, because it was a weakness that didn't really make much sense in Go Busters. I understand where they were coming from. It didn't feel like natural how they did him. But in Beast Morphers, they worked it in the way of the virus had infected them partially, which makes sense because it was inside the injection tubes at the top of the stations when they were about to get first morph. And it shows that, Evox was actually smart and it was a good way to mess with them, try to interfere with them in some way. And Zoe's weakness is pretty much the same. She loses energy and she has to replenish herself with some sort of, edible item. In Go Busters, it was candy, sweets in general, but in here, it was changed to carrots, which is kind of cliche because she has jackrabbit DNA in her, but it's fine. Devon really didn't care about being a leader. He was never focused on that. He was just happy he became a ranger out of luck, enjoyed what he was doing. He wants to save people, he wants to protect his new friends, cares about just the goal, the, perseverance. And that's the best case of being a leader because he's not focusing on, I gotta, not fail. I gotta, push through. I gotta be the best. He doesn't care. And I think that's a really good role model. I do also like when PR does use robots every now and again, so it's not the traditional let's make the monster giant. It actually has something different, and of course it's a little bit reminiscent of what SPD did. Go Busters in general was a much different style compared to past Sentai's, which works great into Beast Morphers since, Hasbro wanted a different element to it. And I do like that they have, you know, communicators. They're different, but, I thought that was cool. And they didn't copy the MPR theme, which was nice. I do like this because it's very reminiscent to of course, SPD, but also in Turbo with the Blue Centurion. It has a very similar feel with the underground tubes and, of course, fake buildings where they come out of. Now, this cockpit is from Go Busters. This is not an American cockpit, which, I'm glad they went with it. There was no reason not to use the Go Busters cockpit. Although, if you pay attention a little closely there, you can see Japanese writing on that building. I would have preferred if they had called it Warrior Mode, since this is usually what this type of mode is called. Now, astute viewers will notice that there's actually a power bar on the left screen of the cockpit. Now, the Zords in Go Busters ran on a power source, which is what they were using in the towers, which was called Enitron. And if you pay attention closely, you can actually see the word Enitron on various scenes. I didn't expect him to, digitally remove it in every shot. That would be too much. But, now you'll understand where it's come from. This always bugged me, and this happened in Go Busters too, of course. Devon is frozen because he's looking at the dog, which is perfectly fine. But Cruz is an AI. Does he have no control over the Zord to move him out of the way? It's a little bit of a nitpick, but again, since Go Busters did this, and I'm assuming that is a limitation, that Cruz has no physical control over the Zord. He just has a connection to it, but Devon still has to operate it. It just seems kind of dumb that there's no way for the Beast Bots, who are companions, which would be perfect for this situation, to simply move them out of the way. I kind of hated this a little bit because it's like, oh, they explained, Zoe's, but Ravi's one was kind of just like glossed over. Oh, it's like, just don't overheat. It's just like, that's not, you kind of jump from gorilla DNA to overheating. That doesn't really work. Obviously, and the writer knew it, so they kind of just went, okay, let's just get it out of the way. Now, you'll also notice that, the power meter does count down, which will, come into story elements later on when they're basically running out of energy. So they do have a limited time in order to do fights. I always wondered, was the monster ice skating or something? It kind of didn't really make any sense. There's that Enitron a little bit right there. This is the shot I wish they had painted it out and it said MorphX. I do like these Zords because they have like multiple transformation modes on themselves. And a rabbit is a new type of Zord. Never really had a rabbit before in this series. Now, of course, the Wolfies is a modification of the Go Busters footage. Of course, like I said, it was originally a chicken. They did a pretty good job of integrating it into the scenes, although there's some bits like the shadows not being put back on top. Well, that tiger sound effect has been used for so many years, starting with Wild Force. Yeah, because she was, testing, Devon and Zoe, because again, they were forced to become rangers, and we weren't sure. And I really love this. It wasn't, the commander that told them that Devon is the leader. Zoe and Ravi made that decision together because they even themselves saw that Devon's mind was clear in all this. He wasn't fighting, he wasn't arguing, he didn't care about that. He was just there to help. And I do like this because sometimes the assistants never really get thanked in PR. And I'm like, Devon's actually that kind of guy that says, no, you helped, even a little bit as you can, he still helped.